differentiated instruction. Is that a lingo that any of you have encountered before? Yeah, what does it mean to you?
It means that you're trying to tailor your teaching to the specific needs of the individual student.
What is that supposed to mean?
Like if one student, has a specific interest that, make them more interested in a topic, try to maybe add that in there. That if certain students need to have some accommodation, some sort of slightly different objectives than the rest of the students, or that they need to have some mostly to be a means that trying to tailor, the education to the individual student as you can.
Okay, I think that's well put. Do you have anything to add to that?
Something you want to put in your lesson plan if your principal comes in and asks you for a differentiated lesson plan, and you can give that.
Here's what it is in a nutshell. My job as a teacher to earn my paycheck is that 100% of my students achieve this objective. That's my job. If all my students were identical, then I have them all do the same thing, or I give them the same lecture, whatever, and they would all achieve it. But my students are not all identical. Some are very good readers, and they could read a text and make sense of it. Some are very poor readers. And if you ask them to read the text, they won't make sense of it, and they won't achieve the objective. Some are very musical. And if I played for them a song, the Elements song by Tom Lehrer, they might love it and really get into Elements and learn them that way. Especially if I offer them a cash prize. I was thinking $100 for anyone who can memorize Tom Lehrer's song. What do you think? It's a hard song. It's like 100 elements. Okay, my daughters learned all the states and capitals, all the presidents, all the parshas of the Torah through songs. They know them all by heart because they learned these songs. Okay? Song for everything. It should be. Some students will, so the bottom line is, I should be ready as a teacher to teach this objective in 3 different ways in the same period. Some students will get it with A way, some will get it with B way, some will get it with C way. Hopefully, I'll hit everybody if I try 3 different ways of teaching. Math is a good example of that. To find the solution to a math problem, there's more than one strategy you could use. There's more than one way of explaining it. So some kids will get it the first way. Some kids will only get it if you have a model, clay models for them. Some will only get it if you show them a video. So you might have to do all 3 ways to make sure everybody learned it. It just depends on the students. When you have 30 students, you're going to have to probably teach each thing 3 times, 3 different ways. And differentiate means some will be through more visual, some will be for more hands-on, some will be more through better to pair them up with a friend and let them do a project together, and they'll, through their friend, they're going to learn better than from you. It's just different from each kid. Differentiated means you're not doing the same one cookie cutter way of teaching. Now, let's go back a bit, because I put this in this order for a reason. Let's go back to number 6, visual instruction. I kind of already gave it to you before, the rule. 50% of our students, what's the rule? Do you remember what I said? What did I say about 50% before? Unless I'd rather say until I write it on the board, they didn't hear me. There's research about this. It's actually 50% of all students. By boys, it's more like 75%. Girls, a little less. I've had teachers I've done this kind of workshops with before who've told me that it changed the way they teach. Just by putting the board, they saw a huge increase in attention and retention and understanding. Just put stuff on the board. Not necessarily words, everything. Pictures. Like I showed you the picture of the laser. Far more impactful, wasn't it, than when I just told you they're dangerous? Change the way you think about lasers now that you saw the actual image. The pictures are so powerful. I have tremendously good videos here. I'm going to give you, keep saying here, it's a cloud drive I have for teachers. I'll give you a link to it. It's got this directory of subjects, and you can find videos on, for example, explaining the 3 kinds of simple machines. And they're cute videos, but there's nothing like seeing this. It's animated. Nothing like seeing this cute video. That's what a lever is, or they call it a lever, or that's what a pulley, how a pulley works. It's doing it yourself is important too. The hands-on. That's the next part of today. But just the visual makes such a difference when we show them things. That's the basic principle. So, how can you think in your own curriculum how this may or may not, what challenges or opportunities you have for visualizing the instruction? Science is obvious. That's like, science is made for this. What about non-scientific topics, like math or history? Those of you who are not teaching math or history, help our math or history teachers out here. Or
history has a whole lot of visual cues. I mean, maps and charts, and I mean, that you have pictures of artifacts or places.
Absolutely. I think a classroom without a map on the wall is a crime. In science, too. When you teach about Isaac Newton, show them a map of the world, show them where England is, show them, they should be accountable for that know that he was in England. When they show them Galileo, show them Italy, show them where Pisa is. Hold them accountable for it. Make them draw, make them be able, maybe not draw. You can have them draw, because by the way, differentiation, some kids love to draw. So if you get them to, if you put a map of, say, if you do this, have them draw that. They could draw that, couldn't they? Do you know what I just drew? There's Great Britain, Spain, France, Italy. They could draw a simple rough map like this. Everyone put a N right there. Everyone put a G right there. Isaac Newton, Galileo. It's on your next quiz. Okay? That's science. Use a map.
Where's Copernicus?
Oh, Copernicus, right here. Okay? So, actually, that should be up like this. Okay, whatever. But understand that this is part of differentiated instruction. When I have them draw it, and I show them this way, it helps a huge chunk of kids who otherwise it went over their head or went in one ear and out the other. Now they're relating to it. Put a date there. This is 1665. What was that year? 65 was the plague of Newton when he was cholera epidemic, when he had to go home and discover calculus and laws of gravity and so on. Okay, I think it's 65. Galileo, 1600. By the way, I was out this summer. I was in the West Coast visiting my mother this summer. She lives in a place where, a little outside of the city, where you can see stars a little better than normal. But you can do this in the city too. She has a 30-power telescope. Slightly better than Galileo's, not much. His first one was 20 power. On a tripod, you can clearly see the 4 largest moons of Jupiter. Clearly. And when you look at Saturn, it's a little fuzzy, but you can see the rings of Saturn. With a telescope that's, and if you're teaching it, I hope you'll bring a 30-power scope in, and maybe sometime in the winter, invite your students to come to a certain place on a Saturday night. Say, anyone wants to come and look at Jupiter's moons, come to the Aguda of Green Spring and we'll set up the telescope and look at whatever. That's a wonderful thing you can do that relates to them, that's optional. Or you can come to the school even. They're all living there in dorms. You could even arrange for the school to do it one Motzei Shabbos. It'd be a wonderful thing. And you can do this kind of thing in any subject. But when you have maps, I recommend every time you teach any subject, make it part of your ongoing routine the whole year. They have to be accountable for the map. First, start with a map. You know why? Because it's visual. It's like I'm handing you on a silver platter. It's visual. Don't make it later. Make it the beginning of that unit. Make them find, here's Barcelona. Here's, what do they call it? New Spain. Hispaniola, I think they call it. Now, a.k.a. Haiti. Put the miles in here. What is it, about 1,600 miles or something? I don't remember. Whatever it is. Have them draw that first. Don't wait till later, because this is visual and it's hands-on. It gets them into it. Don't save the essay writing for later. This will help them get it, so that when they have to write the essay, it'll help them retain it. They have a visual place to put all that information. In fact, you can add to it. Once you want to add new vocab, like Ferdinand Isabel, whatever you're going to add, put those names wherever they belong on the map. In fact, you could have a world map you start the class with at the beginning of the year, and they continue to add to that map throughout the year. There's another option. Beautiful sound effects.
I actually did that. I taught history. The first day I came to the world map. I asked them, I gave it out to everyone, labeled continents, labeled oceans. You'd be surprised how many didn't know.
I taught them environmental science. I made them memorize the Fertile Crescent and the basic spots in the Fertile Crescent. And then also the land of Israel. I made them be able to draw just a very rough map of Israel where they could name 4 cities, 4 bodies of water, 4 other landmarks. Because if I didn't teach it to them, nobody else would. It is not part of the curriculum that I was given. I added it to the curriculum because I figured they ought to learn this. It's not a big deal. They're going to put it in their notebooks. They're going to draw it. It's visual. It's hands-on. I'll quiz them on it. I'll put it on the exam. And they learned it. If they didn't get it from me, they weren't going to get it.
There's this website online. I don't know, this guy's a genius. There's a world map that changes as you move the timeline.
Ah.
If you move the timeline back far enough, the map of England is like one little speck.
I've seen that.
And then as you move it forward, it'll actually tell you the populations and where the Roman armies were.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
And who owned what. I mean, it's fantastic. I'm like nuts playing with it for hours. But if it's online, it's a really great job.
Yeah.
Like a story.
There's like a slider on it, right? You can slide it.
Slide
Right.
it.
Yeah.
You waste an incredible amount of money.
I've seen similar things, very subject specific as videos. It shows, population, for example, population, and it changes color as the population grows.
Yeah.
So, the takeaway I'd like you to have from number 6, Principles of Visual Instruction, is number 1, how vital it is. Don't think it's extra. It's central to your students' success that there's lots of visual aids in their instruction, be it writing on the board, mapping, images, sometimes videos, depending on the context. Number 2, because of that, because it's so important, that it be up front, not some afterthought. Maybe I should add a picture here. It's called inductive learning as opposed to deductive. Deductive is, here's a series of steps to get to a conclusion. And the conclusion is the map. Inductive is, here's the map. Let's make sense of it. Let's induce draw out of the map some information. Deductive is like logical thinking, and we're good at that because we're adults and we're teachers. Inductive is experiential. Experience it first and then formulate the idea. So giving them a visual cue like a map is an experience. And a picture, like that thing about the lasers that I showed you before, it would have been much more effective if I showed you the picture before telling you what it was. Before I gave you the rule. I gave you the rule in advance. I gave you the rule. Don't let the laser hit someone's eye. And then I showed you the proof. More effective than if I showed you the picture. Before laser, after laser. Now give you the rule. That's called inductive. Show the image first. And even pause. Don't be afraid of a pause. Let them look at that. Let them contemplate that. Let it sink in. And then ask for some comments. And after a little bit of discussion, then put the rule on the board. Whatever the rule is. Whatever the lesson is from that. I'm trying to think what the rule is here. You know? The 17th century. Age of... Anybody have a clue why the 17th century might have a nickname, Age of Reason? The first time somebody said, maybe that God, known as Aristotle, was wrong. Aristotle said, heavy objects fall faster than light objects. Well, I don't know. Let's see if it's true. Let's see. If Aristotle's right, when I drop, this pen is approximately 10 times the weight of this cardboard. According to Aristotle, when this pen hits the table, the cardboard should be only 1/10 of the way down. Now, what am I going to do next if I'm teaching this? What's the next words that come out of my mouth? No, this teacher, I'm you. What's the next thing that comes out of your mouth? Ask them to make a prediction. Don't do anything until you make them take a stand. Predict what's going to happen. Have them justify the prediction. Before I do it, I might even, if I really want to get students involved, have 2 students involved, one holding each one, a third student with a timer just for fun, even though it doesn't really matter, and right, or 2 timers, one for each one. Stopwatch, it doesn't really matter, but what you want is that auditory cue when you hear them hit at the same time. When they hit at the exact same time, that's wow. It's true. What if I took a really heavy object, I hold up a hammer, and a really light object, I hold up a feather? What do you think is going to happen? Prediction. Same time? No. Yes, there'll be an argument. Okay, what do you think? You drop it, and guess what? The hammer goes, and the feather goes, doo, 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 doo. Oh, I guess Galileo was wrong. What do you think? So then you have everybody say, okay, everybody, I want you to draw. You go like this. I want you to draw a line across your paper. I always do this. You walk around the room. Nice line, nice line. Remember, you chunk everything. Okay? Now I want everybody to draw. Do this. Draw this object. What? They don't know what they're drawing. So go ahead, just practice. Just pretend you're doing it. Pretend you're my students. Come on. Make it fun. They have no idea what they're drawing. Can anybody guess what you're drawing? You got it. This is the leaning, write it down please, Tower of Pisa. Now, you and I, as teachers, I have to get you to appreciate something. We all know what this is. You have students who have no idea what these words mean. That you just wrote something that's practically Chinese for them. What does that mean, leaning Tower of Pisa? Is that like appease? What does Pisa mean? They don't know what Pisa, they know what leaning means, they know what tower means, they know what of means. They don't know what Pisa means. No, they don't know what Pisa means. Don't assume that they know that. Some do, some don't. Raise your hand if you know what Pisa means. It's a city in Italy. Good. Good job. So Pisa is a city. Guess why it's called the, can anybody guess why it's called the Leaning Tower of Pisa? What? But why is it called the Leaning Tower of Pisa? Oh, because it's in Pisa. Excellent. So there's a city called Pisa, and it's right here in the boot-shaped country called Italia. Italia. Don't be such a racist. Joking. Okay? We speak English. It's fine. Okay. So this guy, Galileo, had this crazy idea. He decided to go to the top of this famous Leaning Tower of Pisa and drop objects off it to see if it's true, if Aristotle is right, that heavy ones would fall faster than light ones. He dropped lots of objects off here. He was doing what we call today experiment. The problem was that his boss, the Pope, and the priests and the bishops all believed that Aristotle, the ancient Greek scientist, knew everything. It's true, Aristotle was really, really smart. Probably one of the smartest people who ever lived. He was a really smart guy, but he was sometimes wrong. In this case, Galileo proved that Aristotle was wrong. And he told everybody, and it made the church very unhappy. They said, Galileo, don't say things like that or we'll put you in jail. Now, did you see how I taught that using visuals? I had you draw it. Oh, did you write Leaning Tower? I had you put it down. So it wasn't you just listening to me. I was making you do stuff while I was teaching it. So it was totally interactive the whole time, and it was engaging also. It was the storytelling a little bit, right? Okay? Now, then what about my problem with the hammer and the feather? So now we have a problem to solve. And hopefully we'll get to solve that problem. And then eventually there's a video on that site of Neil Armstrong or Aldridge, one of them, dropping the hammer and the feather on the moon. And they fall at the same speed. It's an amazing video. You got to see it. You can see it on YouTube, but I put it on the teacher's drive so you can have it there for you. And it's like at the end of that whole lesson, you show them it's true. If there's no air friction, they do fall at the same speed. It's incredible that you see this. You wouldn't believe it unless you saw it with your own eyes that a feather and a hammer will fall at the same speed, exact same speed. That's the idea of visual instruction. It's lots of visuals. Notice how I put this tower here before I told them what it was. That's the principle I'm trying to give to you. The visual instruction should start off a visual, build words around that. You let the visual be your first, what's the term I'm looking for? Your first bid, your first play. First hand you play is the visual. Then you add words to that. Okay, whatever it is, whether it's on the board, a picture you're holding up, an object. I want to talk about color. You might be using this in STEM. Color is a very important topic, especially in STEM projects. So hold up. What are you looking at here? What's the difference between these two markers? This one absorbs all the green and reflects red. This one absorbs all the red and reflects green. Oh, that's kind of cool. I never thought about it that way. But it's a visual. I get them to think first before I tell them what I want to tell them. I want them to see it. Okay? Now, hands-on, if you turn in your packet after the lesson plan, the next page is called Models Worksheet. Now, past years and times I've given this seminar, I give each teacher your own box of 5 pounds of modeling clay. This year, I will provide that to anybody who wants it, but it's a waste for anyone who's not going to use it. I'm happy to provide it. I get it in bulk, and I get it at a good price. I highly recommend it for every teacher, no matter what you're teaching, to use modeling clay at certain times. Modeling clay, when I say modeling clay, I don't mean Play-Doh. I mean it's basically what professional sculptors would use to model something, and it's real good clay. I used to go to Michael's and get it. I found a cheaper source than Michael's, but it's the same idea. The idea of modeling clay is when they have to make a model of something, it's better than writing an essay. It's better than writing an essay. It's better than doing a quiz. It brings out all that they're learning in a very tactile, visual, intellectual way. It's wonderful. And it's cheap and it's easy. I'd recommend it on average doing about once a month. If you want to do it more often, at least try it once. And the way I do it is this. I've tried this with middle school and I've tried it with high school. I've tried it with boys, I've tried it with girls. Every time I've tried it, without a fail, it's just like you said about every year you want to practice because you're not sure. I'm always wondering, is it going to work this time with this group? Or is this group so jaded and cynical they're going to turn up their nose to this? It's never failed me yet to use modeling clay for certain lessons. Not every time, but it works wonders in any subject. The way I do it is this. And again, your school will reimburse you. These are not expensive. You get a stack of, they may even have them in your school cafeteria already, styrofoam plates. Okay? And you have these worksheets, and they're allowed to have either one partner or two partners. Not more than a group of three, but I don't like them to work solo, usually. And you have 4 or more colors of clay that you, the teacher, control. And you have on your desk, in your kit, I gave you a pair of scissors, because scissors are the best way to divide up clay. You give them tiny little bits at a time. Just cut off a little bit of the clay. And let's say I asked them, I want you to model our history teacher stepped out for a second, but let's say I want you to model 1492. And I might see the checklist there. The checklist, I might give you a checklist of what has to be included in that model. Columbus, Ferdinand, Isabella, the Jews, New Spain, the Atlantic Ocean. Come up with a list, right? Now, they're going to say, some kids will say to you, how am I supposed to do this? You know what you say? I don't know. Ask your partners. And they come to you, so they'll come to you and say, can I have some clay? I'm just tell you how I do it. They'll come up to you and say, can I have some clay? May I please have some clay? I make them say please every time. I never give them anything. Derek Harris. You can't let your students talk to you rudely. I don't know about you, but I require my children to say please, and my students as well. If they want something from me, they have to say please. May I please have some clay? Sure, what colors? I don't know, all of it. No. Go back to your partners, figure out exactly what colors you need and how much, and then come back to me. They have to plan it. They can't just come up and wing it. They have to sit down with the partners, what are we going to model? How are we going to make this model? And what are we going to show? I give them toothpicks. I give them, sometimes you can buy it at Michael's, some inexpensive clay cutting tools made out of plastic or wood, that simple. Now notice I say at number 3, explain how and why you chose this design. By the way, I require each student to turn their own worksheet, even though they're on a team. And their worksheet may have the exact same words as the other members of their team. I don't care. Each one has to turn in his own. So they come up to me and they got this plan now, and I say, only one of you come up. It's too chaotic if everybody comes. One person from each team come up for the clay. They come up. They say, may I have some blue? Sure. Can I have some red? Can I have some red? May I please have some red? Sure. I make them say please each time. I give them a little each. They go back. That takes a while. There's 10 minutes of my snipping off clay and giving them a piece of clay. You've got to have a place to store it. You've got to have a place in the classroom overnight for them to store their plates. You've got to think about this in advance a little bit, how you're going to do it. but they get into it. And I mentioned history. You could be that this model is 1492. And the checklist here, you tell them what you want them to include. The Nina, the Pinta Santa Maria, the port of Barcelona, the Jews, Ferdinand Isabella, Haiti, whatever, Atlantic Ocean. You tell them what they should include, but then they have to figure out how to show it. Okay? I don't know if in STEM it's as necessary because they're already doing hands-on all the time, but for almost any other subject other than STEM, it's a great, also when you're doing a lot of physical science, it may not be so necessary, but certainly for history, certainly for math, certainly for language arts, for any other science other than physics, I think it's a great way of helping them engage is by using modeling clay. If any of you are willing to try it, I'm happy to supply you with your own box of clay to try it out with. You can try it one time. Get styrofoam plates. Oh, the plate has to be labeled, right? They have to put their names on there. They have to either make a key or use a indelible ink to mark, or a ballpoint pen to mark up what each thing is. Now notice how I recommend grading them. 25% if you did, completeness means they just did everything that they're supposed to do. 25% for their creativity. They do something that was kind of interesting. 20% execution means how carefully did they do it. Did they do a sloppy job? And kids will get into it. They'll really make amazing little models of boats and animals and plants and trees and palm trees and all. They really enjoy this, almost any age. And then worksheet, 25% of the worksheet. And I've done it where I've done it a number of ways. One way I did it is I just have each team come up to me and I quiz them about it. And I ask each member questions to make sure they all are accountable for it, not just one doing all the work for all of them. I've done it as a contest where I invited the principal in, and I've sat the principal at a desk like this, and each team had to come up, and the principal, or maybe two principals, sometimes it's fun to have, if you're here at TA, you can ask Rabbi Schwartz and Rabbi Majeski both to be judges that day, and they can sit there, and they can give this total score, and the winning team, let's say the winning team gets gift certificates to Goldberg's Bagels or something, or I buy these toy balls that are shaped like the globe. If you're a history teacher, they're squishy balls. They cost 25 cents. Symbolic prize, right, to the winning team. The kids love this. I take pictures. I send the pictures to the parents. If you're at TA, you'll go in the TA Times. They really enjoy making things with clay. And if you do it as a kind of routine, the first time you have to teach them the routine, and you have to teach them about cleanup time and all that. They're going to have to go. I don't like them to work on the desks because it makes a mess. But if they do, they have to go clean up, get wet paper towels and wash it down. Better to work just on the styrofoam because then it keeps the clay. You have a problem. You can always have to deal with kids who want to take clay. They're not allowed to take clay with them. Tell them that's stealing, and some will anyway, but you try to control that. And having storage, it has to be thought about logistically. Where are we going to store them overnight? Because we're not going to finish in one day. But if you can make it work, it's a great tool for almost any subject. Even if, I don't know in STEM if it's so important, but if you're doing, say, if you have it as an option and you find that some equipment didn't come in time or the equipment's broken, you can use clay to make a model circuit that will be better than doing nothing. So if you have it in your storage, just in case that day comes and you need it, then it's there. Have the clay, have the styrofoam plates ready to go just in case that day comes when there's power outage and no one can do the project. So you got the clay. Good. Guys, you know what we're going to do today? We don't have power. We don't have equipment. We're going to model our whatever. It's a good tool. Very good tool. What's your subject again?
Science, mostly.
Yeah, so with science, it's obvious works on almost any part of science you can use. I once said, you could have them model ecosystems. You have 10 biomes, choose 5, or whatever it is, part of science you're teaching. Machines, good. Simple, model the 3 simple machines. Of course, you want to actually build machines. You want to use machines. But in addition to that, modeling is a great way to solidify the learning. And when they ask you, How did I do it? I don't know. I don't know. Anyone teaching biology? If you ever have to teach biology, it's the best way to teach the parts of a cell. Make a model. They'll learn it so much better than any other way. How do they make a model? I don't know. You might want to look in your textbook. You might find some clues there. Point them out to some resources that they have that they could use to try to find out how to do it. But don't help them. Don't help them. Let them figure it out. They can do it, and they're busy doing it. And of course, we have to be constantly walking the room, checking on them, making sure that they're working and doing it, right? Often you have one student who's into it more than his partners. What do you do then? Guys, I need to see everybody working here. I need to see everybody working. If you all want to, otherwise you're going to get a 0. Get busy. What do you think? May I just take a poll so I know if anybody wants clay? I want to make sure I order it and get it to you. You don't need to have it for the first week of school anyway, so there's time. But I'll make sure you get it. Does anybody want to try it? Which level of math are you teaching? Well, geometry is obvious. Oh, trigonometry. Any suggestions how Mr. Greenfeld could use clay models to teach algebra, any concepts in algebra or trigonometry? Fractions? Well, trigonometry is triangles, right? Right? I want you to make a clay model, and your checklist will have, you'll put on the check. Remember, you're giving them the checklist. They have to figure out how to model it. So your checklist will include sine, cosine, tangent. How about just those 3? How do I model that? Don't know. Good luck. Let them figure it out. Let them think about it. I bet you they can come up with some visual ways to show that. Better that they show it visually than just on a calculator. Because if it's just on a calculator, they don't really get it. I just pushed this tan button and I got the answer. They don't understand that. If they can model it, they understand it. How would you make a model of tangent? Now, it's good that you're asking, because how would we? Let's pretend we're students. How would we model tangent? What does tangent mean again? Opposite over adjacent. Of what? Okay, so first I'm going to make a triangle. Okay, here's my triangle. Where's opposite and where's adjacent? What? Okay, right triangle. So now, what's opposite, what's adjacent? Oh, I got to pick an angle. So now I've got to put an angle here. Okay, we'll make this x. Right? Where's opposite? A, B. Okay. Could I make a clay model of what I just drew? Sure. Could I add that to my model? Sure. It could all be modeled. You know, my son had a 2nd or 3rd grade math teacher, English teacher. When she taught them math, she sprayed their desk with shaving cream. She had them do the problems in shaving cream on the desk. Fantastic teacher. They were so into it. You know, anytime you do hands-on stuff, they learn it so much better. Okay? So yes, you can use it for math. You can use it for any subject, really. Even language arts, you know. There's ways of doing it. No one here is teaching language arts, so we don't have to go there. But that's the basics of hands-on. It doesn't have to be clay. But clays are just, it's so, I mean, it's clay because it's modeling clay because you can just use it for anything. So I just strongly encourage you to consider. Oh, so I want to take, or you want to try? Can I get you a box of clay? Okay. Let me just, where am I going to write this down? Oh, on the signing list. By the way, I didn't get your signature. So I'll put okay, if you want, I'll just pass it around. If you didn't sign in, please sign in. If you'd like to try clay once, put a C over here, and then I'll know to get you clay, okay? That's easier than my writing it. If you're not promising me, like if you write a C down and you end up not using it, you didn't violate any oath or anything like that. This is just, I know, to get you some clay. I'm going to be ordering it anyway, so I'm happy to order it for you. I might even be able to get it sent directly to your house through Amazon's. I won't necessarily order from Amazon. There's another supply, which reminds me, I wanted to share with you, one of the show and tells I had was this catalog I use right here. Some of the best teaching aids I get is from American Science and Surplus. I've been on their mailing list for about 30 years or longer. And they now have a website, but their catalogs, they write with a lot of humor. It's fun. You get on their mailing list anyway. It's fun to read their catalog. They write it with a lot of humor. All kinds of, there's a section here called school items, gears and magnets and gizmos, things that are nothing to do, optics, lenses. It's all surplus equipment that they bought. Most of it's new. I bought, thank you. I bought a set of Russian-made radiation detectors.
Do they work?
They work. They actually work. They're from 50 years ago. Green box. All the instructions are in Russian. How to use it. I had to look up online, find out how to use them. I actually, yeah, that's the site. SciPlus.com. Get on their mailing list. That said, since I'm, a communal resource person at this point in my career, I have stuff that I'm happy to lend to you if your school doesn't have it or if you don't have it. I have, for example, tremendously good sets of magnets for anyone who's doing anything with magnetism. Even in history, I've got compasses. Man, I got compasses. And I got compasses of all sorts. And you could use them in terms of teaching about navigation and as an engagement tool. A classroom set, you could have each boy use them. There's lots of things we could do with compasses, okay? I have got, like I told you, a collection of seashells, also related to navigation and history. Less relevant directly to math, although you could figure something out. What else do I have in my kit? I have an old shade. One of these pole shades that if you unroll it, it stinks because of the formaldehyde. And it's great for teaching chemistry, environmental science topics as household hazard, poisons, etc. I keep it rolled up, and I walk into the classroom, and I unroll it, and oh, it smells terrible. Like, this is what's in your home, guys, if you have this kind of shade. I have lots of things like that. So if you stay in touch with me and say, I'm teaching this unit coming up, what do you have on this that might be relevant? I might come up with something that from my collection of gadgets and things that I say. I have a couple of gyroscopes, the kids' toy kind, that just happen to have, like I said, an old cell phone. Whatever you're teaching, I might have something. Oh, by the way, if you use modeling clay, save your old, worn-out markers and put a box in the office in your school that says old, dead whiteboard markers. Ask other teachers to put them in there. These are the best rolling pins for clay. And you don't want them to use your good ones because it makes them all messy. So you keep a box of old ones, and they're great rolling pins for that modeling clay. Oh, you know what I have? Toy cars. I have Matchbox cars, but you need bigger ones. I do have is I made one year 3 pulleys. Anyone teaching physical science, showing the effect on 1 pulley versus 2 versus multiple with a weight. The little demo you can put on the desk. I made those. I also have a set of old telephones. handsets. I never wired them up, but you could wire them together to make a circuit. You do this in STEM also. I need to do this for you. Yeah, off a 9-volt battery. I just haven't done it. I have to pull the wires apart and actually do it. But use alligator clips, and we could have. You don't teach them how to do it. You say, here's these phone handsets. Here's a battery. Figure out how to talk to each other. Let them work out that they have to make a circuit, and it works. They could actually sit around talking to each other. I got some business to donate all their old phones to me. I have this bag full of these old handsets. I just never wired them, but we could make it happen. If you want to do it, I need some time. So hands-on engagement, clay is a great one, but anything you do is going to work for them. It depends on what you're trying to teach them. It's a very good, important tool. And I even mentioned just having them raise their hand sometimes when you're trying to engage the class. Don't try to limit calling on one student at a time as much as possible. Because every time I call on one student, there's 24 others who are daydreaming. Sometimes I have to, but I want to keep it going quickly as possible, right? And one way to keep their attention, maybe the best way to keep their attention while you're calling on somebody else, is this tool I keep coming back to, this clipboard. Okay, let's get some participation points today. Moshe, what's the first law of motion? Good. Moshe calling somebody to give us the second law of motion. Good. Right? They're now paying attention because I'm writing on this or pretending to. When they see this out, it wakes up another dozen students who are otherwise daydreaming. This was a very powerful tool. And I say pretending to. Most of the time I am giving them a check mark. That doesn't mean that I'm going to translate that into a grade necessarily. But I do put something there, and they want to see. Sometimes they'll come up, did I get a check today? They want to know. What do you think? Yeah?
That a professor that was at City College of New York
Uh-huh.
it was using mini whiteboards so that when you're asking the questions, it's like a date or a one-word answer, then everybody just write it down and show it, and then when the students are a little slower, you can just look at the other board and then try to catch up.
Yeah, so I've seen that happen. It's hard to do well. What might be a similar idea that works a little better, and actually in a way I like it better. So the problem with the mini whiteboards, then you have a logistics issue. You got to pass them out, collect them. You got markers that run out. You got to erase them. There's like logistics problems. But you can achieve almost the same effect in their notebook by having them write their answer. This is very good. I'm glad you mentioned that. So you can say, remember, I'm suggesting strongly that you do this. I've said it many times because I really believe in it. One is keeping your markers wherever they are. Okay, I've lost my blue one. Okay, have them draw, a box. Everybody draw a box. Go ahead, we'll model this. Everybody draw a box, right? So you drew a box, okay? I want a rectangular box, not a square box, a longer box. Very good, very good. Nice correction. Okay, so then I'm going to ask you to put your answer in that box. Whatever question I'm asking, okay? Everybody write in the name of the person who first discovered the Jupiter has planets. Jupiter has moons. The planet Jupiter has moons, okay? So I walk around. Excellent. You got it. Fantastic. Oh, and don't have it. Okay, can someone help Mr. Baruch over here? Who can help Baruch get it? Go ahead. You are correct. It is Galilee. Go ahead, Baruch, right in. Everyone draw another box. So you're doing. No one's sitting back doing nothing. I'm not calling on one student. Everyone's involved. Everyone's got to give an answer. Okay? If you don't got it, there's no harm done. Did you write it in? So now that even if you didn't write it, now you can write it because I put it on the board. Now you can write it. Good. Move on. You can do this technique. It's just the same as the whiteboard, but who cares about holding it up? It doesn't really help. This is better. And then it's in their notes. They have it there, right? This is a great way to do it. And again, I can chunk it. Okay, another box. I can walk around the room and make sure you're doing the box. Okay, I can stand in the back with my laser pointer and say, oh, I have two empty boxes there. Mr. Greenfeld, give us a question to fill in the second box related to today's learning. Yeah.
What's the best way to teach students?
Best way to teach students, okay? Mr. Greenfeld, then after he answered, after the next question, I'll say, Mr. Greenfeld, call on someone to give us another question. And then he'll call on someone else. And we can go ahead. It has to be related to today's lesson. Mr. Greenfeld, can you narrow that down just a little bit?
Okay, that's good.
Actually, Mr. Greenfeld, great question. Call on someone to narrow that down a little bit.
Okay. I don't know what you're...
Alan,
I'm going to narrow down that question.
can you narrow down his question?
What's the question about the best way to
Yeah.
teach? Okay, well, what's the best way to teach a visual learner?
Best way to teach a visual learner, okay? Is that good? Okay, can everybody answer that? So then you do that. Notice how I had him, I praised him for his answer, but I didn't like it, so I wanted it to narrow. So I had him call someone else to narrow it down. He narrowed it down. We all answer it. Move on. Why should I give all the questions? I'm working too hard. Let the students come up with the questions. As long as it's related to today's objective. If it's not, I'll say, that's a very interesting question, but it's not on today's objective. Can you give us one that is on objective? If you stumble, can't, no problem. Call on someone to help you out. It's okay. This is not a test. Keep things moving. Keep them engaged. You got to do it. You got to walk around while you're doing it. And the more you can be having them writing as you do and checking on them, that's part of their hands-on learning. Part of their hands-on is them writing stuff. Since we're on this topic, now we have this problem I mentioned I would talk about today. This is the last thing I want to talk about today in terms of differentiation. How do we deal with reading? Stuff that has to be read. Now, I'm not specifically talking about a textbook, but I may be. I want to talk about textbooks tomorrow in more depth. But I'm talking about reading in general, when stuff has to be read. We have students of such different abilities in their reading and comprehension. And reading can be boring, too, for some students. Maybe because it's too hard. Reading is not really visual. Visual means pictures. Reading is verbal. It's visual, but it's verbal. It's not the same as when I say visual, I mean pictures. It's not quite the same. Pictures with words is different than just words. When it's just words, it's tough. But sometimes we want them to read something. It might be an article. It might be a textbook. It might be instructions on how to do something. And you have this different skill level. Some students who get it right away and some who just struggle with that. This is more of an issue with language arts than other subjects, but I think it's really across the board. And believe it or not, part of our job is to teach them these things. Even though you're a science teacher, you actually have to teach them reading. And I didn't mention this, but I should. I kind of referred to it before, note-taking. When you have them draw a line or draw a box or put stuff on the board that you want them to copy down, you're teaching them note-taking. Don't think that your students know how to take notes. They don't. And they may have some idea from other teachers, but that's not how you want them to take notes. You have to teach them how you want them to take notes. If you want them to take notes, maybe you don't want them to take notes. But if you want them to, explain to them how you want them to take notes and walk around and make sure they're doing it that way. If you want them, for example, not to write over here, I don't want them to write over here. You know why? That's sloppy note-taking. Should I care if they take sloppy notes? What do you think? Is it my business if they're sloppy in their notes? I'm asking your opinion. Is it my business whether my students' notes are sloppy or neat? So, right? Do you agree? Remember, my job, if I earn my paycheck, is that my students should achieve the objective. In order to achieve that learning, they need nice notes, at least to some degree, then it is my business. And I can tell them how to take notes, and I can ask them to do it better. I don't want them to write down here in the tiny words down here. I want them to write between the lines. I don't want them to write over here, and I have to tell them that. And I have to correct them and say, no squishing down. Another problem they often do is they'll finish today's notes here, and they'll start tomorrow's notes here, which they think is saving paper, but it's making it harder for them to study later. I want them to always start a fresh page for the next day. Oh, it's a waste of paper. It's okay, I'll give you more paper. Don't worry about it. I'll give you, fill it up. I'm trying to teach them how to be organized. It's my job, because they don't know how. Don't think it's not your job to teach them how to do that, because it is your job if they don't know how. If you want them to achieve that objective, whatever it is. So yes, teach them how to take notes the way you want them to. Correct them when they need it. If you have a student, often you have a student who highlights his notes, you know, a yellow highlighter or something, or praise him for it. You know, I don't think you should require that, but it's nice when you see it, or he has a blue underline certain things. Wow, beautiful notes. Look at how nice you do. Maybe other students will be inspired by that. But there was one other topic I was going to cover, which was, before I got on the sidetrack by notes.
I found that once they get used to like writing sloppy notes and
Yeah.
they hand in their exam papers and go this and
Yeah.
I can't read what's there.
Right. So don't wait till the exam happens. When you see that sloppiness in the paper, you make them correct it now. Okay, thanks for coming. There was just one other thing I was just about to say, and I just lost my train of thought. Visual, differentiated instruction. Oh, how to read. Teaching reading. That's what I was about to say. The last thing. So, reading in general. So, this is something that is a big surprise. Came as a big surprise to me when I learned this technique. But it actually works. I'm not talking about, again, specifically textbooks, which I want to talk about tomorrow a little bit, how to use a textbook in a creative way. But I'm talking about just reading some passage. And this is the technique. Again, this applies a little bit more to language arts than other subjects, but it could apply to some of you. Have them read it aloud. Yes, all of them on their own speed. Yes, it's loud and sounds chaotic. Teach them that I want you to read it not shouting, God forbid, but read it aloud. I want you to, with hand gestures, tell them, I want to see you, before you pass it out, say, this assignment today, what we're going to do today is you're going to read this story about Galileo, or the story about Columbus, and it's 2 pages long. I want you to read it aloud with lots of emotion, not shouting, but emotion and showing hand gestures. Okay? And remember, we've already trained them how we get the class back to quiet. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've practiced that so many times that they know that well. So when I cue you to come quiet, you'll come quiet. And so when I pass this, I want everybody to start reading. I want you to read this aloud. And it's amazing what it does to their reading comprehension when they're reading aloud. I think a lot of the reading comprehension problems that some kids have is because they're supposed to sit there and read it in their head, and their head keeps getting distracted. Do you hear that? Do you know, in Jewish thought, why a bracha, a blessing, must be said aloud? Why not say it in your head? Or the Shema Yisrael prayer. Why is that should be said aloud? There's something that happens when we articulate something to our brain different than when we don't. There's something about articulating it that deepens significantly our mental connection to that thing. So when you have them read that passage aloud, it's not just shtick, it's not just for fun, it actually helps them comprehend it. And so this is my suggestion to you. It may not come up in math, but if it does come up, and if you're ever asked to substitute teach an English class or whatever, know this technique. It's a fantastic technique for reading and comprehending a passage of text, regardless of what that passage is. And that's part of differentiated learning. It's part of, in a sense, hands-on engagement. The hands-onness of reading is saying it aloud. And we should be, while they're reading aloud, we should be walking around the room and visually approving of their reading, giving them that kind of feedback. I like the way you're reading. Let them get into it. It's a wonderful thing. And you'll see improvements, I believe, in your students' comprehension and retention of the text they read if you let them read it aloud. Yeah, it's a good thing. He asked what about having them read or explain it to each other? Absolutely. In fact, one wonderful thing to do is to make that part of your routine from day one. I didn't talk about this earlier, but I'm glad you mentioned it. Let's say you have, go back to this morning where we talked about classroom procedures and rules. Okay? So here's a sequence. If you're taking notes today, here's a sequence. This is your sequence, not their sequence. Your sequence is you did an intro, you taught them the attention routine. That means you taught and practiced. When I need your attention, here's how we do it. You taught them the procedures. Okay? Starting with and then you taught them the fat. Each place I wrote an arrow, each of those intervals where I put an arrow is a place where you could pause and have them teach that previous idea to their neighbor. When I say go, turn to your neighbor and teach your neighbor the attention routine. Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. You guys did a great job. Next, procedures. When I say go, teach your neighbor the 5 procedures of this class. Go. Let them go on. They don't have to do the whole thing, but a lot of them get taught. Right? 5, 4, 3, 2, perfect. Teach them fat. Give them the whole thing about fat. When I say go, turn to your neighbor and teach them fat. Teach them all the rules about fat. Right? You have them teach each other each thing you taught them. You can do this not just for this, anything you teach them. Definition of sine, cosine, tangent. So let's say today you did sine and cosine. Okay? So first you're going to teach them sine, and then you're going to teach them cosine, and then you can teach them tangent. Okay? However you taught them, visual, auditory, video, clay models, I don't care how you taught them. Before you move on, when I say go, teach your neighbor what sine means and how to find it. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're at attention. Excellent. Let's move on to cosine. You teach them that. Take a few minutes to teach that. When I say go, right? You can do this throughout your lesson. Have them pause at a chunk and turn to their neighbor and teach their neighbor the same thing over again. Wow, it's a fantastic tool. What it does is it reinforces it. You can just see what that does in reinforcement. Having to say it over to somebody else is so powerful. It can be part of your routine of everyday lesson. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great technique. no matter what they're doing, what they're learning, you can pause and say, I want you to turn to, you have to figure out which neighbor you're going to turn to, right? So if you're in this row, these two neighbors, or these two neighbors, you got to figure this out in advance. Figure it out. But you can have them do that. Make sure you're walking the room while they're doing it. Remember, your job as a teacher is to walk the room as much as possible and keep things going. If someone's not doing it, get them on task. But that's a great tool in between each chunk. Pause. It could be a chunk that lasts 2 minutes. This might have taken 2 minutes. This might have taken 10 minutes. I don't know. But having them reiterate it to a neighbor for 60 seconds is a fantastic way of helping them really get it. This is all part of that 25-minute middle of the lesson where they're actually learning before the assessment at the end. It's a great tool you could use. Put it in your notes. Try it out. I think you'll find it reaps great rewards. This only works if you've done what in it on the first 2 days of school. Build into them this routine of how we get quiet, how we follow Derek Harris. These basic things, especially how you come to attention. If you haven't done that, you're going to find yourself shouting to get them quiet. You don't want that. No shouting. You don't have to do that. You should be able to train them the first day of school. Here's how we come to attention when a teacher needs your attention. You want to practice that with them 3 or 4 times the first day, 3 or 4 times the second day, until it really is automatic. As soon as you do that counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're quiet. And if you use the FAT system, give them a point. Guys, you got quiet so quickly, you just earn another minute of FAT. They'll be so motivated to really, for 2 reasons. Not only because they're getting fat, that's not right. But what's the other reason they're going to be motivated? Because they're learning. They're really learning. This is a way they're engaged. They want to be engaged. They want to be in a classroom with a teacher who's controlling the class, who's taking them somewhere on a journey. This journey of trigonometry, this journey of history, this journey of science. They want that journey. Even though they complain and they have attitudes and so on, they actually want the journey. And they're sheep and they need guidance. You're the shepherd to help them get there best you can. You know, with maybe a little of help from above, you can do it. But these kind of strategies have been proven successful in many classrooms, and I'm just offering them to you as something to try out. And you'll try it. I think you'll see they'll work for you as well. But you got to. I want to kind of wrap up today with reminding us all of the most important thing. Mr. Bittman wasn't sure he could come tomorrow. And I told him, he said he could only come one day. He has a lot of conflicts. I said, if you could come one of the 2 days, come Monday. Because tomorrow I think is really important, but it can't be more important than the first days of school, how to set up your entire culture of your classroom, that first day. As I said to you at the beginning, that first second, not minute, not 5 minutes, the first second they walk in that door, that's when they're learning who you are and what kind of class this is. Is this a teacher who cares for me? Is this a teacher who is a professional? Is this a teacher who's in control of the class? Or is this one of those teachers they always give us who doesn't know what he's doing and, you know, I can walk all over him, it's going to be boring or out of control? A lot of kids get frustrated when there's troublemakers disrupting the class. It makes them, they want to learn, and there's a couple kids who are just troublemakers, and it really bothers them. And they want you to be in control. And that control you get on day 1, minute 1. And you keep it or lose it right then. You can't ever have that first day again. It's that one chance. Again, in Jewish school you kind of can, because you have, after the holidays, come back for the 3-week break, and you kind of get a second chance, but not as well. It doesn't work as well. It helps a little bit. And there's a downside to that as well. Even if you had a fantastic September, because of that break, you have to kind of start again anyway. That first day back, pretend it's your first day again. Stand by the door, greet them at the door. I'm telling you, don't assume anything that they'll remember anything after 3 weeks of vacation. Assume that they don't know anything again. Treat that first day back in October as if it's the first day of school. Again, reminding them all that stuff. Again, it's a reminder. It's not new, but you have to, don't assume that they just remember it after a big break like that. They don't. They weren't thinking, unfortunately, I hate to tell you, they were not thinking about you for 3 weeks in your class. They were thinking about other stuff. We like to think, we spend so much time preparing for our classes, we're thinking about it so much, we sometimes forget they're not. Like, they leave our classroom and they're sometimes not thinking about us at all. It's hard to believe, but it's true. So this section of the seminar, sections parts 5 through 8, my first goal is to convey to you the essential importance of writing some kind of lesson plan and how to structure that lesson plan so that you have enough time. The biggest mistake I made in my first 2 years of teaching was not saving enough time at the end to really assess and help them see and them see what they learned, and to feel that closure and remind them. Just like that Southern preacher who, any great speechwriter knows this. You have an intro, you tell them what you're going to, the theme, you tell the theme, and you say it, and then you sum up, conclusion of, again, the theme again. 3 times. Great essay writing, same thing. A great classroom is the same thing. Intro, content, conclusion. That's what you're doing every single day. And if I don't quite make my lesson in time, so you wrap and say, we did half of it, we'll finish tomorrow. If I have extra time, you have these great additional resources which I'll give you, which are enrichment, which can add to your classroom. You have those available to use. I'll give you the drive, the link. I was going to do that tomorrow, those details. Unless someone's not going to be here tomorrow. Otherwise, I was going to give you tomorrow. Yeah? All that visual stuff. We covered today visual instruction and the principle. I hope you got clear. It's got to be visual. Otherwise, many of your students did not hear you. Even something as simple as telling them what page we're going to, what page we're on. That's simple. And having the objective and the warm-up on the board every day, vocab, helps them enormously. Especially not necessarily the first day, but once they get in the habit of looking to that spot every day, you have no idea what an impact it makes on them. Kids come in, they're tired, some of them are hungry because they skipped lunch, they're daydreaming, they're fuzzy, and they're looking at, oh, okay, it helps them, it saves you so much trouble. And the hands-on, we talked about numerous ways. The clay is one way, but hands-on can be raising hands, it can be drawing pictures, it can be building science equipment, using science equipment. One thing I mentioned, I'll just add here, I didn't stress it. Any equipment you use with these kids, I don't care what it is, clay or real equipment, whatever it is. Periodic table, in math, you might use certain models. Before you have to teach them the routine of how to use it. And that includes the rules, safety, whatever, and includes cleanup. Teach it to them and model it for them. Like, don't just say, clean up after yourself. I mean this. Like, you take, even if you're pantomiming it. When I say clean up, I mean if there's a spot on your desk, you're going to go get a wet paper towel and you're going to clean your desk. I'm just pantomiming, but I'm showing them what I mean by clean. That level of nitpicky instruction the first time you'll be glad you did it. Because otherwise you say clean up and the kids think they cleaned up and there's clay all over his desk. I cleaned up. I don't know about you, but to me these are probably stains. But if that was clay, pretend these stains here, can you see it? Pretend those stains are clay. Many kids think that's a clean desk. It's covered with clay. Oh, it's not just a little bit of clay. If you want them, you have to teach them. You can't assume that they think what you think. And then the last thing, all this leads to number 8, which is differentiation. Once we do these various techniques, including reading, including maps, including hands-on, including having partners teach it to each other, including having groups work on a project together, these are all ways of differentiating so that kids with different strengths, some are more visual, some are more tactile, some are more verbal, it will help more of them achieve the goal, which is all we care about at the end. Do they learn today's goal? You might have been out, it might have been during the break, I was telling, was that during the break or not when I told about the student I had who could not answer questions on a test? Did I tell you that one? And all he could do is oral, so I tested him orally. He knew the answers. He just could not write. It was I never encountered this as a 10th grader. This is how he was. I couldn't judge it and I couldn't fix it. All I could do is try to work with it to help make sure I did my job to get him that learning in. And he did it. He learned it, at least at a passing level. He didn't have an A, but that's okay. He passed. I think he got a 75, maybe 75%. Not bad for someone who can't write. Literally couldn't write. Thank you for your kind attention today and participation.